We are talking free agency on today's show, but first, I selfishly ask, if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please consider doing so. If you enjoyed today's video, be a part of maybe 78 people to help us reach 21,000 subscribers strong. What's going on, Broncos country? Welcome on into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. We're going to recap a signing that took place over the weekend that I think is already a starter on this team. And then we're going to look at some updated free agent targets after the first week of NFL free agency. But I made a short on this about the Cody Barton signing, who comes over from Washington after playing 4 seasons in Seattle when he was a third-round pick out of Utah. So Barton signed a 1-year deal worth up to $4 million, and that's not a ton of money, but that's also not no money. So I think this is a decent investment in a spot where Denver needs to fill a starting role after Josey Jewell left in free agency, signed a nice 3-year, $22+ million contract. Good for him. I always felt like he was one of the more underappreciated off-ball linebackers in football. He did so well against the pass and against the run as well, and also just an all-around playmaker. So happy for Josey Jewell kind of getting the bag, if you will. But Cody Barton, 1-year deal worth up to $4 million. I think this is your replacement at inside linebacker. So let's get to know him a little bit better than a 60-second short I did outside of the bar over the weekend. Last year, he was with the Washington Commanders, where he played 13 games, and it was his second season as being a true starting linebacker. He also started his last season in Seattle, and in both those seasons, I think we're looking at a just Walmart version of Josey Jewell, where he'll be solid tackler. He's not really all that good at coverage, though. He tends to get picked on a little bit in that area. But maybe what's going to be the glaring weakness from Cody Barton compared to Josey Jewell is he doesn't have great pass rush upside. He is not going to generate a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback. And listen, when you're paying one guy $4 million for a season and another guy's getting $22 million over 3 seasons, you can expect there to be a bit of a downgrade, right? So I think he slots in right next to Alex Singleton, who got a nice extension last offseason and will be surrounded by Cooper, Browning, and Benito. Now, when it comes to the roster the depth chart standpoint and just the overall value of this contract, my takeaway was, I guess Drew Sanders is not a starting inside linebacker. After picking him last year in day 2 of the draft, to me, the writing was on the wall of, hey, Josey Jewell entering the last year of his contract. I like this pick for a handful of reasons. I liked him coming out of Arkansas, and I like the getting ahead element of if you let Jewell leave in free agency, which it seemed likely after paying Alex Singleton last offseason, then you already have a replacement in Drew Sanders. However, Denver has sort of toyed with the possibility of moving Sanders from inside linebacker to outside linebacker, kind of like what they did with Bear and Browning. So I think we'll have to wait and see once training camp rolls around to get a real clear picture as to what position Sanders is going to be. So with that being said, let's kind of update the free agency tracker for Denver, bringing in Brandon Jones on the biggest contract yet, 3 years, $20 million, re-signing P.J. Locke and Will Lutz and Michael Burton. Then you brought in Malcolm Roach to replace Jonathan Harris on the defensive line, and then re-signings in Lil Jordan Humphrey and Adam Trotman, and now Cody Barton on a 1-year deal worth up to $4 million, according to Mike Kliss. So grade the Broncos' first week of free agency for me. A, B, C, D, or F. I give it a D+, C-. They spent a lot last year, so I didn't think no matter what things happened with Russell Wilson in 2023 or they would be big spenders this year because they filled a lot of holes last year in free agency. But to me, I'm just not super jazzed up about the zero pursuit or zero gaining of a quarterback. I know they tried for Sam Darnold, and ultimately he went to Minnesota, and if I were him, I probably would too. You get to throw to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison in a 1-year prove-it deal. That's probably a little bit better than Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims. But I think it's a C-, D+ so far. I really feel like they had much bigger needs to address on the defensive line. And Malcolm Roach and Cody Barton are just not going to move the needle a ton for me. Now let's talk about some free agent targets for Denver as we enter the second week and into the second wave of free agency. there are not many good quarterbacks left. Let's just kind of get right to the cut to chase here. Ryan Tannehill is probably the best option, right? Maybe Josh Dobbs. Colt McCoy has been dealing with an elbow injury for almost a year at this point. He can't even really throw a football that well, so I wouldn't get your hopes too high up on him. Then there's Trevor Siemian, the most winningest quarterback since Peyton Manning retired. Want to run that back? I don't. There's just no good option here. They all suck. Let's just quit beating around the bush here. There are no good quarterbacks remaining. So I think we're going to see the only quarterback really on this roster play for this team in 2024. At least open up the season as the starter, and that's Jarrett Stidham, which Sean Payton, you made your bed. You moved on from Russell Wilson. You knew it would be tough to upgrade at the position, either in free agency or the draft, given you have the 12th overall pick. So now you are stuck with Jarrett Stidham, a quarterback that you pursued in free agency last year. You gave a 2-year, $10 million contract to, a decent investment for a backup, right? Not a 1-year, $4 million contract. So now it is time for Sean Payton to back up what he has been doing all offseason long, which is churning this roster over without a clear path to upgrade at the quarterback position. And we're going to see whether or not Jarrett Stidham is just one of the many Broncos quarterbacks who played half a season since 2015, or if he is a legitimate starting NFL quarterback. With that being said, let's check out some of the best free agent players all around. So we'll kind of go 1 through 25 here. Not all these guys are going to be, apply to Denver situation. I don't think they're bringing Justin Simmons back after signing Brandon Jones. They don't need help on the offensive line. I feel like they're good at wide receiver. Chase Young is very intriguing because of the age and the resume, although I think he's going to command too much money for Denver. Stephon Gilmore, I do like a lot, but I think he's in the similar boat as Chase Young as may cost Denver too much. Jadeveon Clowney, Quandre Diggs, Julian Blackmon. I don't hate the idea of pursuing Clowney. I feel like he is best fitted in Baltimore, though, and I don't know if you're going to get 9.5 sacks out of him in Denver next season. Xavier Howard and Tre'Davious White, a couple of cornerbacks and a spot of need for the Broncos. We'll talk more about one of those guys in a little bit. Trent Brown, we don't need an offensive line. Calais Campbell, that could be a potential target for Denver, although I think at his age, he's really only going to want to sign with a clear contending team. Adoree Jackson, if Denver can't find a better option on the market, he may be cheap enough for them to swing for, although he sucked last year for the Giants. So pros and cons. Jamal Adams, no. Stephon Nelson, I do like. I think he'll be on the cheaper side compared to Stephon Gilmore, and I don't think he's too far off. J.K. Dobbins, I'm intrigued by because I don't think the Broncos have a clear-cut direct path at running back, so maybe signing a guy who, yes, his career has been plagued by injuries, but right now Denver's in a spot where beggars can't be choosers. They don't have a ton of cap space to spend on players. They have not been big spenders so far, so maybe J.K. Dobbins could be a very low-level sign with a very high ceiling, given that when he has been healthy, he has been very productive for Baltimore. Moving along, none of those other guys really make a ton of sense for the Broncos. Micah Hyde, you're good at safety. Tierre Tartt, we'll talk about more. You're good at offensive line, and then some wide receiver. So of those 25 available free agents, here are 4 that I think could have a home in Denver. First off, we'll go in order of where they were ranked, and this is former All-Pro cornerback Tre'Davious White for the Buffalo Bills. So let's talk a little bit about Tre'Davious White here. So White, as we know, has had a very up-and-down career, right? Started off as one of the best cornerbacks in football, to be honest with you guys, out of LSU. I mean, look at what he did his first few years in Buffalo. Pro Bowl, All-Pro, 15 interceptions, 54 pass breakups, and then, unfortunately, just a really bad string of unfortunate luck for him as he was dealing with an ACL injury, and then an Achilles injury, and then another injury. And, well, since 2021, the last 3 seasons, he has only played 21 games, so a little bit more than 1 complete season over 3 years. It is, though, Moneyball time for Denver. I want to really get this point home. The Broncos at this point are not looking to sign big-name free agents because they're not looking to be an AFC contender in 2024. At least I don't think they're going to be an AFC contender. I'm talking actually winning playoff games, being more than just a 7 seed that squeaks into the playoffs and has the right to get blown out by the 2 seed, okay? And with that being said, they got to look for players that all other 31 teams are deeming washed, injury-prone, or not worth the contract or the time. But if we can find some hidden gems like Tre'Davious White, get him back healthy, and get back to the way he played before he had all those injuries, this would be an all-time signing for Denver, right? A 1-year, $5 million deal, and if you're able to recapture that all-pro cornerback play that he had not too many moons ago, it has been about 5 years, but still, this is Moneyball time for the Broncos. We are looking for players that every other team is looking past for one reason or another, whether it's age, injury history, or if he's a submarine pitcher. I don't give a damn. This is what Denver's priority should be. Moving on here, how about Stephon Nelson, cornerback out of Houston last year, where it's not a big name coming into the season, and then he played really well for the Texans. 63 tackles, 12 pass breakups, 4 interceptions. Stephon Gilmore and Tre'Davious White are going to attract a little bit more attention because they are just bigger names around the league. But if other teams aren't interested in Stephon Nelson, fine, we'll take him. And we'll put him right at the CB2 spot because Riley Moss currently occupies that starting spot. And I don't think after very little play last year that the starting cornerback role should just be gift wrapped for him. There should be some veteran competition brought in. I'm not talking a 4th-round pick in the draft and go, we'll call it a day. Riley Moss may be a good cornerback, but none of us know because none of us saw him play more than 10 snaps last season. It's unfortunate that he missed all of training camp with the sports hernia injury. That's a brutal time to miss camp as a rookie. But ultimately, I think there should be some veteran cornerback competition brought in. Moving on here to another member of the Texans last season, Tierre Tartt. Started off with the Titans and then was released mid-season. I'm not really sure what all went down in Nashville for them to move on from a productive interior defensive lineman, but they did. Now, last year with the Texans and Titans, 24 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. Season before that, played more games and had more tackles. For me, the name of the game for Denver this offseason is if you can at least upgrade the quarterback position, at least improve the other holes on your roster, which is run defense, interior defensive line. I've been beating this horse to death the last couple of weeks, but I really want to illustrate just how bad, let's just rip the Band-Aid off right now, the Broncos' run defense was last year. 30th in yards allowed on the ground. 32nd in yards per carry. They were the only team who allowed 5 yards a carry. Just every time the opposing running back got touched the football, they were halfway to a first down. That is atrocious. 17, 20 or more yard runs. 40-plus yard runs 5 times. The worst in the National Football League. And then their best stat was at least they only gave up so many rushing first downs, 119 times, which, by the way, is still 24th in the league. This defensive line needs a makeover. There's a good chance they move on from DJ Jones, $10 million in cap savings. I feel like they may be trying to work out a trade if a team did not sign the defensive tackle they were looking for. Now, they did add Malcolm Roach from the New Orleans Saints. I don't feel like this is enough. I don't think adding Malcolm Roach can make you check the box of we have fixed or at least even attempted to fix the run defense. And it's likely not going to happen in the draft because the Broncos have 1 pick in the first 2 days. I beg your pardon, 2 picks in the first 2 days, 1 in the first round, and then not again until the 3rd round. So unless they trade back to stockpile some 2nd and 3rds, I don't think they're going to be attacking defensive line early in the draft. And it's not going to be an improved situation from last season. And quietly, that really plagued the 2023 Broncos. Now, before we get on to the other free agent target I have in mind for Denver, there is an awesome deal going on at Fanatics that I want to get you guys in on, which is you can get any deal, any player, I beg your pardon, or a custom jersey, if you'd like to, for $102. Usually NFL jerseys can run you up to $150, $160. They are giving this one nearly 30% off, 40% off, whatever the math is, and you can pick any player you want. So if it's Patrick Surtain, Cortland Sutton, kind of running out of players, but still, if you want to get your own custom player, I know there aren't a ton of great jersey options out there, and I'm not doing a great salesman job myself at the moment here, but I just want to keep it a buck with you guys and go, you're not going to get a better jersey deal than this one right now. So use our link, chatsports.com/DEN jersey, to get that awesome sale over at Fanatics. Fourth and final free agent target from the top 25, Michael Thomas. Now, this is not one I would personally pursue, but we do have to acknowledge the very real possibility that Sean Payton may look to have a reunion with his former All-Pro receiver, who, yes, was great in 2019, as we all know, led the NFL in receptions, an NFL record, 149, yada, 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 and since then has stood on the sideline more than he has been in between the lines. Last year, played 10 games, the most since 2019, and he still produced only 448 yards and 1 touchdown. So maybe if you're able to get a full season or at least like 15 games out of Michael Thomas, you could get 600 yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns, and hey, that's not too bad if his role is as a wide receiver 3, right? That'd be pretty good production in that spot. Personally, when I look at this wide receiver room, I'm a little bit more confident in it than other spots of this roster because I do think Lil Jordan Humphrey, Brandon Johnson, Jalen Virgil, these are not household names even in Denver, but I have seen some really good production out of them at stretches, and that's just the backups, right? Cortland Sutton comes off a 10-touchdown season. Hopefully Tim Patrick can kind of pick up close to where he left off, and then you've got Marvin Mims, who I'll talk about more in a moment. But there's no denying that Sean Payton, he loves the one-way ticket from New Orleans to Denver. The list has grown. These are all players that at some point were signed by the Broncos that previously played in New Orleans under Sean Payton. Not every guy made the roster, but at some point they were brought in for either minicamp, OTAs, training camp, midseason, whatever it may be, and we are running out of room on the screen for another addition, which could be Michael Thomas. I feel like they could pass on adding a wide receiver like Thomas because if Tim Patrick isn't ready to be a wide receiver 2 after the injuries, which would be very acceptable, how about Marvin Mims? Right, there are a lot of players on last year's team that were rookies that didn't see the field a whole lot, that Denver's got big aspirations for, and this year that they're kind of putting all their eggs in some of these second-year players' baskets like Riley Moss and Alex Forsythe and Drew Sanders. But one guy that did see the field an okay amount last year, that played well, was Marvin Mims. All-pro punt returner, kick returner, 22 grabs, 377 yards, 1 touchdown. We saw some really good play out of him, especially in that Commanders game early in the season where I'm confident that Marvin Mims could take a good second step in the second year of his career. The other guys, no one can say with an actual spine that they know for a fact Riley Moss or Drew Sanders will be a decent starter because what do we have to work off of? You spying at practice and you saw some decent play? I don't think so. If that was the case, Riley Moss would have been the one that replaced Amari Mathis, not Fabian Moreau, the one-year vet guy. So I've got more belief in Marvin Mims compared to the rest of the rookie class for taking a bigger step forward in year 2. Now, who do you want the Broncos to sign? Let me know in the comments section which guy that we went through today or someone I left off my list you would like to see Denver pursue in this second week of NFL free agency. That will do it for us on this edition of the Broncos Breakdown. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know things are a bit gloomy right now, and listen, I understand you, I hear you, but at the end of the day, you just got to trust that the Super Bowl winning coach, Sean Payton, has a good plan in place.